Overtime!
Owning arcade games means fixing arcade games. And whether you do it yourself or you pay somebody else to do it, when you've got a collection like this, these games are gonna need to be worked on. Even if they're seemingly working perfect temporarily at any point in time, you're gonna need a little bit of preventative maintenance to keep these things in top fiddle. And it just comes with the territory. It is what it is. These games are 30, 40 years old or older, and they're gonna need maintenance to keep working, right? Again, even if they're already been rebuilt, been restored, they're gonna need maintenance, and it is what it is with these games. Now, there's something that I've been putting off for a while, something that I've been kind of worried about, thinking, do I have a ticking time bomb this game is actually in my basement, inside my house, in my collection. Do I have a ticking time bomb, waiting to go off? So for a long time, I've known that, sort of early 90s midway boards, so like Mortal Kombat and NBA Jam, the capacitors used on those soundboards were really poor quality, right? There was a capacitor plague back then, just terrible capacitors all over the place. And eventually, those caps would leak and the electrolytic fluid would get out and basically eat up the PCB, kind of like battery acid damage that you might see in other types of games. And I knew I needed to do something about this. But my NBA Jam that I kind of fixed up last year, I got it for a great price. There's a whole playlist on my channel about this. Everything was working great, so I was kind of putting it off, but it was gnawing at me at the back of my head that I'd eventually need to do something here. And recently, I received two very stark reminders that I needed to do something about this NBA Jam before it was too late. And the first was a post on Facebook by my buddy Mark from Mike's Amateur Arcade Monitor Repair, and he basically said, he said, I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times. If you have a 90s midway soundboard that has not been recapped, cap it immediately, right? So he basically posted these images as your warning, and I'll show these images here. So here's a zoomed in picture. I think this is an NBA Jam board. The original cap, everything looks good from the outside, from the top, but once you take the cap off, you can see that fluid there showed the cap was already leaking, so this damage was already on its way. You looking at the cap itself, you can see some of that electrolytic fluid leaking out. And so Mike did a great job, cleaned it all up, installed a new cap kit, and everything's good to go. And it wasn't just the radial caps, it was the axial caps too. You can see here, removing some of the axial caps showed that there was damage. I don't know if it leaked necessarily from the axial caps or from the radial cap and then flowed underneath the axial cap, but it's a good thing Mike got this all cleaned up and back in good shape to have many years of faithful service going forward with this NBA Jam. And the second thing that really shocked me into action here was my buddy Mark from Back to the Media. He's got him and his wife Danny own this awesome shop in Winchester, Virginia. They sell games and records and comic books and all the stuff. And you've heard me talk about this a bunch. They're building an arcade in their back room, set to launch, maybe this month, maybe next month, we'll see. And anyway, Mark's been working on a Mortal Kombat, and he sends me these photos. And he's like, hey, have you ever seen damage like this? This is my Mortal Kombat soundboard. And look at what's happening to these traces here. This is actually right underneath the heat sink on the soundboard. And those traces are getting eaten up, right? And we'll look at some of these other photos. These caps are obviously original. Doesn't look like the board's ever been touched. And he's got, and here's what it's looking like on the top over here. Looks like maybe one of those the chips are potentially damaged, all these this is just gross, right? And I'm like, Mark, I'm sorry, right? This happens with these boards. And, he's looking to maybe fix it or to buy a new one for a good price if anyone's got a Mortal Kombat soundboard out there. But I don't want this to be me. I don't want this to happen to my stuff, to my NBA Jam soundboard. So in this episode, we're going to basically install a cap kit in my NBA Jam soundboard. I got it from Peter, arcadepartsrepair.com. I think there's 22 caps in this kit. And basically that's what we're going to do in this episode. We're going to do a little bit of preventative maintenance. We'll pull all the original caps out, really inspect this closely and see if any of them have been leaking, have been damaging, the board. Hopefully not, because it is perfectly working. So hopefully there's not much damage. and we'll install this cap kit in, get everything squared away, and then we'll put it back in the cabinet, and hopefully I don't screw anything up and everything's still working again. And I've actually already got the soundboard out here on the bench in the garage, so we can go ahead and get started right here. So if that sounds like fun, let's go! Okay, here's the soundboard from my NBA Jam, pulled out of the cabinet and sitting on the workbench. I think this is considered the 40023 soundboard. That's kind of what it says on the serial number sticker right there. And yeah, although this says Midway Games, this was technically made by Williams, and you can even see it if we come in nice and close right there, embossed on the PCB, because Williams bought the old Midway, and then they kept the Midway name for the brand for video games, but it was still Williams engineering. Anyway, I think officially it's the A14732-40023 soundboard, and we got I think 22 caps on here we need to replace. Here's the cap kit that I got from arcadepartsandrepair.com. Again, it's for the Midway A14732-40023, which is from NBA Jam and NBA Jam Tournament Edition, and this is the Sound PCB cap kit. 23 caps in here, many of which are axial caps, so that'll be interesting to work with. And here is our sheet right here. I think my plan of attack is, looking at the board visually, I don't immediately see any signs of corrosion or caps bulging or leaking, but you can never really trust your eyes. Often if you pull these, you'll see that they were corroded and already starting to leak underneath the cap, but it just hadn't spread out yet. So it's good to be doing this, this maintenance. And yeah, there's no signs at all that this board has ever been touched, ever been worked on. So we're doing this as a bit of preventative maintenance here. Again, seeing the horror stories from others and wanting to avoid that. So I think my plan of attack is I'm actually going to do things a little bit differently than a normal cap kit. In this case, I'm going to remove all of the caps to start. And then we'll have a better look at what's going on. I'll be able to clean up anything if we see any signs of corrosion or leakage. And I will go through the sheet, and as I remove them, note and make sure that they are the same values that I'm replacing with, just to confirm. And if I notice anything bad, I'll mark something down. But again, this sound PCB is working, so this is really just preventative maintenance. And the other thing that's going to be interesting, I've been using this new technique that I learned from Mike from Mike's Amateur Arcade Monitor Repair, where I kind of just use the soldering iron and apply heat and kind of rock the cap right out. I'm not sure how I'm going to do that with axial caps. In fact, let me go grab my needle-nosed pliers. I think that's going to help with the using that sort of, I don't know what you call it, the rock and roll technique of removing caps. So I've got my Hakko needle-nosed pliers. I'll put them right here, but we'll go ahead and get started. I've got Brandon, aka Advanced 13 Enclave, aka Deckard 995 with Off-World Arcade going on, live streaming right now on Twitch. So I'll be watching that while I work on this. So let's go ahead and actually start in reverse. I've got C103 right here as a normal radial electrolytic cap. And I can kind of just do my technique directly on this and rock that sucker out. There we go, it's coming. So that's out. And we'll go back with our solder wick and clear out that hole in just a second. But this is, let's see, if it's going to focus, hopefully it will, 100 microfarad, 25 volt cap, and that is the same as what we see on the list for C103, so I'll put a little check mark right there. And let me go grab my solder wick, which is a great new tool I've really enjoyed using. Again, learning this technique from Mike. This thing isn't the cheapest, but it works so well to very rapidly clear out. I'm gonna open it up. Clear out, oh, it's right here. The solder left over in the vias. So we'll hit it right here, and we can go on both sides if we need to. We cut off the tip just so we are working with a fresh piece. And actually, I just replaced my side cutters, my Hacko side cutters, micro cutters, whatever you want to call them. Because I finally managed to break my old ones. I was, I think, trying to cut stuff thicker than it should. It even says on the handle, max cut copper 1.3 millimeters. I don't know if that'll focus right there on the handle. This is the CHP 170. And I was cutting things I really shouldn't, and then the spring wasn't working, so it wasn't automatically opening again. And then I just broke one of the cutting sides, whatever you would call them. So let's come here and clear this solder. Okay, here we go. Might have to go from both sides. And these traces are so small, I want to avoid any kind of potential damage to them. Yeah, maybe I need to get it from over here. It's windy outside. I don't know if you can hear the wind chimes going. There we go. That looks nice and clear for C103, both vias, if you can see that. So that looks good. And let's go with one of the axials. C46 is right here. So maybe if we kind of prop it up like this, and maybe I can grab it with my needle nose pliers. Sorry, the gimbal motor gave out again. It's at a weird, the camera's at a weird angle, and I guess it's trying to protect itself. So C46 right here. Let's try to grab it with the needle nose pliers from the top, maybe. This is kind of awkward. Mike, what do I do? What do I do in this situation? Something like this. And this one's also, this leg is bent over, which kind of stinks. There, I kind of pushed it through. And now hopefully I can grab it and get it the rest of the way out, but boy is this awkward. There we go. Okay, now we're cooking. Yeah, I don't think we damaged anything, which is good. Try to repeat this on the same side. I need to go redeem my points that I'm collecting. I'm saving up. I already have enough to get to make Brandon play Dig Dug, which is a game he does not like. Okay, there we go. Whoa, look at that. Somehow I destroyed the capacitor. Look at this all up and close. It's like the, I don't know, like the sort of a plastic or cellophane kind of coating on the outside. And we got too hot and I kind of rubbed it off. Isn't that interesting? And hopefully we'll still be able to see what the value was on this. Looks like 10 microfarad, 25 volt. Looks like we'll be replacing it with a 10 microfarad, 100 volt. Yeah, the whole label came off. Yeah, looks like 10 microfarad, 25 volt. So we'll make a note of that. And let's see, we'll come back here and where was it? Right there. C46 was right there. Clear out the remaining solder. Come around from the top. This stuff is kind of stubborn. All right, let's get the last of this solder out of there. All right, I think that looks clear for, was that C46? So we're good there. I'll move on. I'm going to remove the other 20 caps that are still on this PCB. I'll pop back in. If anything interesting happens, I'll sort of highlight it. And then once all the caps are removed, we'll come back and we'll clean the PCB before we install the new caps into it. So stay tuned and I'll be right back. All right, here I am once again regretting my choices in life. I've got all the caps, all of the original electrolytic caps removed from this NBA Jam soundboard. Here you will find them all over here, scattered all over here. All of the capacitance values matched what's in the kit from Peter, arcadepartsrepair.com. Quite a few of them have higher voltage values, but all of the microfarad values are the same, and that's good. More good news, I didn't notice any damage, no leaking caps, no problems like that whatsoever. Everything looks good, but this is still good preventative maintenance because eventually those caps will leak, and everyone has had, everyone that I've seen has had really bad issues with that. So I'm glad that I went and did this to prevent that from happening. However, these caps, especially the axial caps, were a huge bear to remove. Quite a few of them, and these pads and these traces are made of paper. I lifted a bunch of the pads. I think, mostly, like where's a good example? Like right here, C85, the right pad there is gone. But this is a two-sided board, and I think all of the pads that I removed were pads that had no connections on that side of the board. Here's another example. I think that's C67 right here. That pad right there, on the negative side, is blown away, but it actually doesn't connect to anything on that side of the board. So I think ultimately I'll be okay. I am going to go very slowly and methodically when I put the new caps in, testing continuity on both sides of the board. And in fact, I'll hold it up, to the light and make, and maybe even check the schematics and make sure, what connections, if any, are supposed to be present on both the top and bottom side of the board before I insert the new capacitor. Solder it in, make sure the solder flows onto the top side. Yeah, do a lot of continuity testing and making sure everything checks out. The reason that I was blowing out so many pads was it was so difficult to remove the old solder. These are very small pads, very small traces, and in this case, the solder wick wasn't cutting it, and now I'm realizing that I used the bad stuff. This isn't the good solder wick. Holy cow, did I make my life much more difficult than it should have been? Yep, I'm an idiot. This is the good stuff. This is cheap stuff that I got from Bob Roberts years ago that I had as like emergency backup stuff. This doesn't have any rosin in it. This is the good stuff that I should have been using. This explains why it was so difficult to remove this solder. There was no flux, right? Because this stuff is infused with rosin flux, and this has no flux. So here's what I ended up having to do. I experimented with a bunch of stuff. What was ultimately able to help me, and where, towards the end, most of the I wasn't damaging the pads anymore, the last several. So I added fresh solder, right? That introduced flux, because this has rosin core, whatever, flux core solder. So that allowed the heat to be conveyed better, and that allowed me to pull the legs, the leads of the capacitors, the old capacitors, out of the vias, and then you typically would go back and add even more fresh solder, and that helped me remove it. But this wick wasn't cutting it. This terrible, I mean, it's like 99 cents, right? Versus I think this is like $5, right? So I actually went and used my my solder sucker. This is my Vampire Tool solder sucker. I think this is better than the old traditional solder pult or solder pullet, whatever type of thing. So I was doing this, and that allowed me to get really close with my soldering iron, putting the tube of the Vampire solder sucker right over and sucking all that stuff out. So I think everything is free and clear here. we can go ahead and clean this. Yeah, now it makes sense, and I was racking my brain. Yeah, I was doing this so late. I've been traveling for work. I took a red eye home. You know, it's now the next day, but I had taken a red eye home the night before when I was working on this before in the previous you know, scene of the episode, and so I was on like no sleep. So that makes sense why I would grab this instead of the good stuff. So maybe I should even throw this away, or at least write bad on it. Like that's an emergency backup sort of tool. This is what I should have been using. So yeah, my brain was fried, so chalk it up to that. But it is what it is. We will hopefully get this thing working. So I'm going to clean off the flux that's on this side. I don't know if it'll show up on camera. You can see the flux on the board. So we're going to clean this up. And I'm going to use a new toothbrush for cleaning this one. In the past, you've seen me use just a regular, sort of cheap, regular, you know, bristle toothbrush. This is something that Ty Laurie has put me onto lately. Ty is very well known in the hobby. He's got his own YouTube channel. He's a channel member here at Overtime Arcade. And this is like a toothbrush with, I think, like 20,000 bristles. They're super, super fine bristles. It almost looks like foam, but that is not foam. Those are bristles, super, super fine bristles. So we're going to use this to clean it. So yeah, we're going to clean off the resin, then I'm going to or the flux. Then I'm going to use this is a heat sink. I think that is for the amp. This vertical IC on the board. So we're going to clean off the old. I'm going to use just a Q-tip and isopropyl alcohol. We're going to clean off the old heatsink compound. We'll put new heatsink compound on it. Yeah, so I'll go ahead. We'll do this real quick. Just spraying a bit of isopropyl on the board. And we'll just come in here and gently clean up all this flux. So yeah, I'll go ahead and do this using this cool new toothbrush. Link, you know, is down. I got this. Oh, the isopropyl's getting to me. Link down below. You can get this on Amazon. It's pretty cheap. So yeah, affiliate link down below if you want to pick up one of these, and it's a great way to support the channel. So I'll get this all cleaned up on both sides. We'll dry it out, and then we'll be ready to install the new caps into this sound PCB. Okay, we're nearly done here installing the new cap kit in this NBA Jam soundboard that I got from Peter, arcadepartsandrepair.com. You can see we've only got one left here at the end, C103, which is this 100 microfarad right here. Brand new high quality Nichicon capacitor that will go right here at C103. And yeah, I think it's gone okay. I've been extremely meticulous and really taken my time installing this cap kit. Really thoroughly testing every single solder joint, really thoroughly. And often each cap can have like 4 solder joints. It's a double-sided board. They are through-hole vias, and sometimes there are connections, up to 4 connections, you know, 2 for each leg or lead of the capacitor on both sides of the board, right? So a top side and bottom side, part side and solder side trace connecting each of the 2 legs or leads of each capacitor. So I've made sure every single one of those is good, making sure solder flowed through. Sometimes I had to apply solder to the top to make sure, especially with the axial capacitors, that all of the solder joints were in good shape. I tested all of that out. We've got good continuity. I'm feeling really good about this. You know, one sort of difficult part was replacing the capacitors that are underneath this little heat sink for, I'm guessing this is this vertical IC is an amp chip, like I said. You know, I took the heat sink off. I left the vertical IC, you know, mounted, and I was able to replace the axial caps, no problem. But the vertical caps, the radial caps, I really needed to kind of do that, you know, with the heat sink on, because if you can see, the heat sink mounts or grabs onto the vertical IC with those bolts there, with you know, Phillips screw heads and nuts on the back, and especially this right screw here. You can see there are 2 radial caps, you know, that are vertically mounted in the way there, and there was no way I'd be able to get a screwdriver, you know, bit to hold that screw in place if I did it after those caps were installed. So had to put the heat sink back on. mount it back on, and then install those caps. I kind of fished them in there. Anyway, kind of a pain, but everything went in relatively smoothly. And I'm feeling cautiously optimistic about this. So we've got one remaining cap that we'll do together. And so C103 is actually a little bit interesting. So on the part side, if we zoom way, way in, and you can see it right in the middle, those two, whoops, I bumped the camera. Those two vias are unpopulated. The one on the left here has no connection on the solder side, so there's no traces that go to that left via there, but the right one has that nice fat trace that it's connected to, which looks good. And so on this side, we would expect the left via to have a connection because the right one does not, right? That right pad goes nowhere. And the left one looks like it goes nowhere. But if you look really, really closely, and kind of, I sort of have to hold it up to the light to see it. You see where there's that plus sign to kind of mark the polarity of this capacitor? There's actually a trace perfectly aligned under that little leg of a trace, under that plus sign that goes to that really thin trace that kind of bisects the perimeter of the circle in the silk screen. And it's not going to show up on camera, but if I hold it up to the light, maybe I've got a flashlight here. Maybe I can show it to you like this. Let's try to do this. If you can see, it's going to flash. And do you see it showing up right there? Yeah. You see that? There is a little trace perfectly aligned under that plus symbol. So we do have a trace to test there that goes to the R89 resistor on that trace. So let's go ahead and pop this sucker in. So we're going to note polarity. The polarity on the capacitor itself, the negative side is noted by this white stripe with that sort of minus symbol, which makes the side that doesn't have the stripe the positive side. So we'll align this properly. So negative goes away from positive. We'll slide this in. And we'll get that nice and snug, and hopefully we can get the solder to flow through to both sides. But there was no damage to this pad, so I'm feeling pretty good about our ability to solder this. On the first attempt, no problem. Sorry for bumping the camera again. And I'm going to slide in here, and hopefully my head's not in the way, and solder both of these legs in. Here's our first one. And I'm leaving the soldering iron on the pad for a little bit longer, just to hopefully help flow solder to the other side to make the connection. So let me take a quick look at this, and I think that looks okay from the top side, or from the bottom side, the solder side. The top side is much harder to see, obviously, because we've got the cap in the way, but I think I see some shininess right here. So hopefully the solder flowed through, so we will test it with our multimeter on this side first. So here's my Fluke digital multimeter set to continuity, and you've seen me do this before. I'll put one probe on a solder joint on the same trace that we're trying to test, and I'll touch this leg, and the beep means we have a nice good connection here. And we should not have sometimes there's a momentary beep as the capacitor fills, but no continuity flowing through there. And now we'll sort of move this over, and I see that R89 is on that trace that I want to test. So I'm going to kind of do this in a little bit of a contorted fashion, hold my multimeter to that leg of that resistor, and then touch this leg of the capacitor. And we've got good solid continuity there. So let me do this. I will scratch this off the list on the instructions for the cap kit. So C103 is complete, and now all of them are complete. So we'll put the clipboard away, and we will double check our polarity. And again, the stripe on the capacitor indicates the negative side, and we see the positive marking on the silk screen is away from that negative stripe. So our polarity is correct, and I will mark it just with a Sharpie to kind of tell myself, yep, you have done that correctly. And now we can flip it over, and the final step here is to trim the excess legs of these, or the excess length of the legs on the new capacitor, and I'll kind of do this, sort of try to zoom in so you can see what I'm doing. And I cut with my flush cutters just above the sort of volcano mound of solder. You don't want to cut into that. And so we've got our two legs here, and we are good. One thing I'll do again real quick, I will clean the capacitor, or the PCB. You can see all that shininess is sort of the flux from the new solder, kind of, you know, and it's not a good idea to leave it, right? It's sticky, it attracts, you know, grime, and I think theoretically over time it can become corrosive. Some types of rosin flux can become corrosive, so I'm just going to hit it, and we did this before, with some, this is 91% isopropyl alcohol in a spray bottle. Get a little bit on there, and I've got my fancy new super micro bristle toothbrush, and we'll just go back and forth like this. And once it dries, all of that shininess from the flux will be gone. So I'll wrap this up, we'll let this dry, and then we'll go downstairs, stick this back into the NBA Jam cabinet, run a few tests, and hopefully, hopefully this thing is still working and I haven't completely screwed it up. Okay, we're down in the basement. I've got the soundboard plugged back into the NBA Jam, mounted back on the PCB tray, wired back up, ready to go. I've got my fingers crossed. I hope everything goes okay. And we're gonna power this up and hope for the best. So I've got you focused. I've got the camera focused on the PCB, the sound PCB. This is sort of the best angle I could get, and I've got a flashlight pointed at it. So if any of these caps pop or explode or go crazy, we'll be able to capture it on film. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on the power at the power strip. Then flip the switch on the game. Here we go. Keep your fingers crossed. 3, 2, 1. Oh, I heard a sound. Something's working. All right, let's see. Let's move back up. Looking at the screen here. And I'll change the refresh rate to make it sync with the monitor. Okay, I'm kind of cautiously optimistic right now. I heard some sounds coming out. And we're on free play, so I should be able to start a game. Yeah, buddy. Yeah, let's turn it on to test mode. And we'll go down to, let's see, let's get a better view of what you're going to see here. All right, that's a bit of a nicer view. And I think we can go down to diagnostic tests, soundboard test, general test. One tone, okay. I was worried there for a second. One tone means soundboard, okay, that's great. And we'll do play sounds. Let's say, let's see. It's all from U2. I guess I can't play every single sound. Maybe it's playing a couple from every sound ROM. Start button to exit, return to main menu, exit to game over. Coin door test switch closed, return test switch. Here we go. We are cooking. Look at that. Let's go ahead and just get a game started. All right. And we'll play as my favorite team, the Boston Celtics. Okay. Look at that. So I'm going to call this successful. This game was, or this video rather, was a little bit longer than I expected to be, but we did successfully recap this sound PCB in my NBA Jam. Everything seems to be working great right now. It was really a close call there when I kept tearing all those solder pads, but we got everything in. That cap kit from Peter at arcadepartsandrepair.com worked great. Everything's working great here. I'm glad I followed the advice of Mike from Mike's Amateur Arcade Monitor Repair to do this cap kit to avoid any possible issues with the caps in the future. and yeah, to avoid, unfortunately, what happened to my buddy Mark. So yeah, I think we'll wrap up the video here. Please do all the things that YouTube wants you to do. Like, share, comment, subscribe if you haven't already. Consider becoming a channel member. You get early access to all new videos, access to our monthly members only live stream, which we just did the other day, and access to our private members only Discord, which is super fun, really awesome, great getting to know everyone a little bit better. We're sharing everything that we're working on. Let's see if Mikhail can get a 3 right there. Oh, look at that, off the backboard. If you're looking for other ways to support the channel, I do have a merch shop. You can buy t-shirts, hats, mugs, that sort of thing. I've got some new ideas for merch coming out soon, but we've got some great stuff up there now. And let's see if we can hit another 3. Probably not, that one's short. Oh my goodness, look at that. We're still in the game here. Also, you can leave if you don't want to sign up for a monthly recurring membership with the channel membership, which I totally understand. If you don't like recurring monthly payments, you can do a one-time donation with a super thanks. So there's a button down below. You can leave a super thanks. And yeah, I think we'll wrap it up here. As always, thanks for watching Overtime Arcade. I'm Charlie, and I'll see you next time.
Overtime!